Thank you, Johan. Wow, I promised a friend today, earlier, to make this fun. I don't know how to, and we're also running out of time, so I am really sorry, Adrian, if you're out there. I was going to say, let's do a Mexican wave, but never mind that. But thank you very much for having us on this platform here today. And I'd like to thank my colleagues who's helped to put this presentation together. And of course, to thank the companies that we've worked with, as well as the other government agencies and NGOs that we've worked with, because these are the people who've given us the insight of what's going on the ground, and which is what I'm going to be talking about in a very summarized version today. So our vantage point here, this is our 6th year in a roundtable meeting, and our vantage point is as social and environmental assessors and advisors to companies here. And I feel very privileged to be able to have that insight, to be able to go to the ground, spend time on the ground to find out what's happening on the ground. So I really like to start, if this works. Nope. Okay. I'd really like to start by just taking a moment to really think about all those people without whom we won't be here today. The oil palm industry is a bounteous industry, and it is, this bounty is made possible by the blood, the sweat, the tears, and occasionally the lives of oil palm workers. Now, I'm going to talk from a Malaysian context, because that's where most of the experience base has been. And for those who are sort of new to the Malaysian palm oil plantation context, we are highly dependent on migrant workers. Most of our oil palm workers on plantations in the States are migrant workers. But this is a fact of the plantation economy since the beginning of the plantation economy, where it's always relied on a large base of labor force, which is usually not local. So in Malaysia, we started with, back in the British days, Indian workers from southern India, especially on our rubber plantations. And that's moved on so far, and in modern times, in current times, most of our labor workforce has come from Indonesia, from the Philippines, from Bangladesh, also from India. And before highlighting some of the issues that we've seen workers face on the ground, just a small caveat. By no means are all the issues that I'm going to be talking about, it's not present in every estate. I do acknowledge that there has been a lot of progress made in the last 6 years that we've been involved, where companies have indeed raised wages, improved contracts between workers and employers, and instituted a lot of trainings and sort of communication mechanisms for their workers. But really, so this is just a really brief summary. I'm not going to go into detail. If you want to talk about it, please look for me later outside in our booth. But possibly with just the 3 things that I like to highlight here, because this has to do with sort of the ILO core labor conventions that all member states have an obligation to meet. Apart from those 3, the 4th one is actually abolition of child labor. I'm going to focus on freedom of association here as an example, okay? Because that really affects a lot of other things that workers face in Malaysia. Bondedness, it's just the way that migrant workers' conditions here in Malaysia, how they get here in the first place from their countries, the way it's been structured and regulated has I won't say forced labor outright, but it's a kind of bondedness. So workers are bonded to one company for a certain number of years, and they are unable to get out of that contract legally. Okay? So that presents many issues that affects them. But I won't go into detail. I'm going to talk about, however, legal status, because there are still workers in Malaysia, migrant workers in Malaysia, from RSPO members, companies, who has still not got full legal documentation of their status as legal workers in Malaysia. So there are other issues as well with children in plantations, women in plantations, and contract workers. And I'd like to also point out that the differences in how these different problems, what workers face, the differences are due to location of the plantations, whether they are in urban areas or rural areas, the demography of the workers, and how managers approach the issues. Okay, just a quick review of the key areas that we see are issues. What we call legal gray areas. I put gray in quotes, but if you think about it, it's actually quite clear what legal issues are. What I'm talking about here is sort of conflicting laws and policies that makes it hard for where there are conflicting laws and policies. And what we want to get at is that there are laws and there's policies, and there's different types of laws in Malaysia. There's federal constitution, which is the supreme law. There's acts of parliament, and there's also policies of different government departments. For example, freedom of association, which is the right of a worker to unionize. The Ministry of Human Resources, for example, supports the fact that migrant workers have the right to join Malaysian unions, workers' unions. But the Ministry of Home Affairs, who regulates the migrant workers' affairs, has a policy that says migrant workers cannot join unions. So you find that different companies have different way of approaching it. Some companies have written into the contracts of workers that workers cannot join unions, and if they do that, they have a right to be terminated. They have a right to terminate the worker. So this is like the kind of different laws and policies that are happening, and companies are not necessarily